Good morning. Welcome to Accuracy in America, a very unscripted show. We know what we're going to talk about in general, but there is no teleprompters for us, right? So it's
Right.
you get what you get with us.
We don't read that well anyway. So.
Yeah, probably. I'm not even sure I could do that. Anyway, so I'm Don Irvine. I'm your host today. I'm joined by my longtime co-host and friend, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. All right. So we had a little bit late last week on Friday, so we had a shorter time between the two shows. But there's still news out there and some things that we probably will want to revisit to a certain degree.
There's actually a lot of news over those 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. And we're going to start with from this Memorial Day weekend. Joe Biden, now the president, his first Memorial Day speech, all of this kind of stuff. But one of the things in there is that he talked about democracy being in peril. So, what's going on here with the president?
Well, they're all the Democrats. I mean, the word has gone out throughout the land that if you're a Democrat, you need to say that democracy is in peril because of voting rights laws being passed in various states. The Republican legislatures are looking at, what looked like a lot of cheating in the last election, and they're taking measures to counteract it. And the reaction, the stuck pig screaming reaction of the Democrats shows you that there was cheating and that these measures hit the bullseye on how to stop it. Right? They're saying, voter ID, which, I think something like 95% of adults have an ID, 96%, and they're readily available to the others. Basically, anybody who wants an ID has one. The people who don't have them are people living off the grid, and they're probably not interested in voting anyway. So, I mean, this idea that it's a big stamp on somebody's voting rights to say you have to show your ID before you vote, especially all the other things we have to show ID to do, it's ridiculous. It's, that's like a 78, 80% issue. So it's stuff like that. It's just, hyperbole, nothing to worry about at all.
Yeah, I mean, and in essence, what he did during the speech when he said that is that he was targeting Texas, right? He was targeting the bill in Texas, and kind of basically saying that we need free and fair elections, or everybody should have the opportunity to do so. So what I find this to be interesting because one of the criticisms from the liberal media about Trump was how Trump would take events and politicize them, throwing all the things in here. And what has Joe Biden just done? He's done exactly the same thing that they accused Trump of, is throwing this issue, and they're trying to weave this issue into this whole day, which is too bad, really, because on a day like today, or a day like, Monday, basically, I guess I should say, is where we're supposed to be honoring the fallen, those that served. Though it seems to have been lost on Kamala Harris. She considered that to be just a long weekend.
Yeah.
It's
pretty tone deaf too. And here's the thing, a couple of things before, first of all, so in Texas, you had a they did not manage to win that state for Biden. Okay. But they definitely had a dress rehearsal for things that would make Republicans win. Drive-through voting, 24-hour voting. Let's have election day, and it can be long hours. I'm all for 6 in the morning to 9 at night. We get all jumpy about we're not starting to get poll results till late, but 6 in the morning to 9 at night, everyone who works is going to be able to get to their polling station. I'm sorry, no one works the 6 in the morning 15 hours every day, right? Or on election day, right? That doesn't happen. That's a false excuse, right? So they had 24-hour voting, drive-through voting. I mean, there's no chain of custody on those ballots. There's no integrity to that. They're not listening. People are concerned about integrity of elections, right? There's some funky things happening. Even the people who are for Biden, have to acknowledge that. It's like this, they're definitely, you need to tell me why they kept Republican observers from watching it, right? If it was all on the up and up, why in all 4 of those states did they keep Republican observers from watching it, right? You weren't doing anything wrong, let them watch. So You know, these reforms that these states are coming up with is because they have identified where the fraud was occurring and they're directly addressing it. And that is what the Democrats are upset about, is like they thought they had a way to cheat their way to hegemony, and now it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you know, I mean, whether or not this was going to, you know, how it would affect a presidential election or whatever. I mean, you know, it definitely has an effect on, you know, other races that are going to be extremely important.
Right.
You know, yeah, look, I mean, you can accuse the Texas Republicans of, you know, of kind of usurping their power or whatever you want to say. But look, you know, you have said this, I think, many times. You know, elections have consequences, right? And Texas. The majority of the people elect these Republicans to the legislature. They
over and over and over decades, right? It's
right.
not, they didn't just wake up one morning and decide to be Republican.
Right. This has been this way for quite a number of years. So they knew what they were getting. Yeah, you know, and there's been a lot of protest about other, you know, states with election laws and things like that. But I thought it was interesting. There was a story I saw this morning that said, you know, they looked at Europe, and, you know, if you talk about, you mentioned, you know, ID. Virtually every country in Europe requires
47 out of 48 or something like that.
Yeah, it was huge, and it was interesting.
Mexico does it. Nicaragua does it. Honduras does it. How can Honduras be capable of this, but we're not? Give me a break, right?
Yeah, it's like even banana republics apparently have voter ID.
Yeah, but we can't. Oh no, that wouldn't be fair. You know, I mean, that's ridiculous. You need to explain. You know, but I will say this, okay, Democrats need to explain why voter ID is an unfair thing. And the idea that, you know, black people or whoever can't access getting an ID is ridiculous. But we need to explain, you know, what exactly is bad about drive-through voting, 24-hour voting, all that, because the populace doesn't really understand that. Like, hey, that makes it a lot more convenient and a lot more people get to participate. And what exactly is wrong with that, right? Well, what's wrong with that? I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with that, right? And they're easy to elucidate, prove, and explain. But we haven't really done that. And I think we want to win this battle. We better like get us a little palm card that, you know, synopsizes all the points and make sure that people understand what's dangerous about this, because I don't think that they do right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, that's the thing. We have, yeah, it's almost like you need the talking points to go back and fight back against this that are solidified across the board, and everybody needs to be repeating those same things. You kind of have to beat these things.
That's what they do. I mean, they, you know, like Biden, he's not the only person who decided that democracy is in danger, right? The entire party, they're all out. Democracy is in danger. Democracy is in danger. Over and over and over, all over the country, because you know, they coordinate their messages. They're not like us, right? They actually get on the same page and just repeat, because they realize that, you know, most people who vote for them are not really thinking anyway. They're more feeling or more emotional voters. That's who they're appealing to anyway. So it's just, you can just message them, you know, you can convince them. Right.
I mean, Joy Reid, you know, MSNBC. I mean, you know, she did a segment, you know, will we always be a democracy? You know, and she focused in on what happened on January 6th as, you know, kind of the beginning of the end, you know, these kinds of things that will take over and whatnot. That is the threat to our democracy. So it's, yeah, you're right. I mean, that messaging is coming, you know, from all these people, but that's it. They're trying to be on the same page, more or less, as you're alluding to. But they're going to try to beat that into people's heads. Is that all of a sudden people be out there going like, oh my gosh, our democracy is in danger. What's going to happen? You know, and all of this, that we have to be, you know, wary of this, that it's going to be all Trump's fault or all these other people's fault, you know, whatever, that type of a thing. And yeah, you know, vote, you know, fair elections. The Republicans are, you know, we want fair elections, but we want fair and honest elections. We don't want fraud. We want voter integrity. We want something there. And for heaven's sakes, just as like the countries you mentioned, I mean, I think it was, you know, like Japan, they issue some kind of card or something like that. It's actually got all this information in there, and you're supposed to bring that in. And if you lose it, it's got all your information. You lose it, you can verify it there, because I guess they have access at the voting places to like everybody in Japan or whatever in that local area. Right. They can look it up and try to do it. But you know, they're trying to verify you are who you say you are. You know, a type of thing like this. And so there's countries that are doing things with barcodes and all kinds of stuff like that to try to keep that, you know, tight. and yeah, you don't hear this voter suppression thing there, right, at all.
Right, and
I mean,
right, so the other thing is,
really isn't happening.
The other thing is, look at the safeguards they're enacting. They're the same safeguards we're suggesting. So places that are way past us in the fraud department are saying, hey, this is what we do to stop fraud, right? And it's the same stuff we're doing, right? And I think the stuck pigs over there on the other side are concerned not that we're, ending democracy, but that we are addressing real vulnerabilities in the system. They won vulnerabilities. That's how Biden won,
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and there's always going to be a certain level of, I think we have the technology. We can do a lot with it to make sure you are who you say you are. But then then we'll go down. There'll be those that'll be worried about privacy and other issues. But, I'm kind of open. I understand. I get concerned to a certain degree about how much information is out there on the internet. But, there's a lot of stuff about a lot of us already on the internet. Once we start participating in certain activities, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever,
you doing stuff like this too is even,
right. This information is being constantly, scraped and mined and whatever, and creating a profile of all of us out there. So for me, at this point in time, it's like, look, if you want a fingerprint or an iris scan to prove who I am, I'm okay with that now. It's like, how much? I'm not giving up much more than I've already given up at this stage of my life anyway.
That's correct. Yeah, right? Your expectation of privacy ends the moment you log on for the first time.
Right.
It really does.
Yeah. Right. And you're right about the access, too, in terms of this is the thing that always drives me crazy too, about this consistent drumbeat from the left, from the liberals about, well, we're disenfranchising all these poor people. Well, look, the government, these governments have bent over backwards to say, all you got to do is do this, and to get to here, and you can get a government issued ID. You don't need a driver's license. They make this pretty darn easy, and then they say, well, there's a poll tax or whatever. It's like, no, you can get this ID for free. Right. How many more different ways do they have to do this? But but it is in the back of, I think, maybe it's the old Rush Limbaugh low information voter, group or whatever.
Right. They are the low info voters. Yeah. Here's the thing about it. Okay. Before 2020, the most votes a president had ever gotten in a presidential candidate had ever gotten an election was about 67 million that Hillary got, right? Trump got almost 77 million. So Trump, who lost the election, blew past the previous record by 8 million votes, by about 10% of the votes almost, or a little more, actually, a little more than 10% of the vote, and lost badly in the popular vote and in the electoral college. So if that election was on the up and up, why are you worried about democracy being threatened, right? Everybody seemed to be able to get to the polls on November 3rd, right? Almost 160 million people. And then we never had more than about 135 million vote in an election. So, I don't think access is really our problem.
Right. And I don't want to, I'm one who's not for like relitigating this election. It's done. We need to move on and concentrate on the 2022 and 2024 and just take back the House, make sure we get full control of the Senate, try to get the White House in 2024, that type of thing like this. And a lot of Democrats, they talk about the Republicans, others who are in essence still whining and relitigating. But when they fight on these election laws and things like that, to me, I think that's also to an extent relitigating the past elections, because they're worried about the future elections. Along the same.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think, I heard the thing. I don't know if you I guess you had it on your list. So you must have heard it too. There was a conference, I think, down in Texas this week. It was like a faith and family conference or something. And one of the speakers was Sidney Powell, who said that Trump will be reinstated on, sometime in August or whatever. There's various predictions floating around and so forth. I don't think it works that way. I think what the Constitution says is Biden would have to be impeached and removed from office. So, they're not just going to say, oops, but it will be noted that he won fraudulently. And if that's the case, then, that justifies, Republicans in state legislatures strengthening voter integrity, right, all over the country, and at the federal level to the extent possible. So, a very important thing is being fought over here, even if, you don't get smoking gun proof or you don't get Trump back in office, right? I think that's unrealistic to hope for. But I do think it is entirely useful to figure out how this happened and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Right. And Trump should not make any statements about the possibility of a reinstatement. I mean, just stay away from that.
Just let it play out. I mean, your benefit, you could have the whole nation turns its only eyes to you in 2024. If you can lay off of this and just let it play out, well, we kind of ripped off Trump. We sort of owe him, right? Yeah, we will owe it, and the Arizona audit is beginning to look like it's going to, Maricopa County is going to flip, and probably the state too. It's also looking like there's a chance that Georgia and Michigan could flip. You're hearing talk about that. Delegation of Pennsylvania legislators are in Arizona right now, watching how they did their audit, proposing to do something similar in Pennsylvania. So, all this could keep coming back up. And our use for it now is not to reinstate Trump. It is to discredit the Democrats and what they did in this election, right? A lot of their little lies about everything that happened in 2020 are coming to the surface.
Yeah, I just knowing Trump, I think it's really difficult for him to just keep his mouth zipped on this,
But I mean, there's a lot of stuff he can say without saying reinstate me, right? He can say, look, I told you there was cheating, right? He can say that all day long, and as each new revelation comes out, he will look smarter and smarter for saying that. That's different from saying make me president again, right?
Right. Yeah, he's becoming much more active with his blog and other things lately too. He was quiet at the beginning, but he's really ramping it up lately. We were talking a little bit about Texas, but the basic thing here in the end is that they were voting, and then the Democrats walked out, so they didn't have the quorum they needed. So I guess Governor Abbott's going to call them into a special session because they're going to get this done. I mean, that is the goal, right?
Right.
Can the Democrats walk out again? I mean, I didn't look deeply into it to see, what remedies
they have some countermeasures they can do too. So it will pass. I mean, if you have a majority of something in the legislature, and there's nothing they want, will get passed. And Abbott has already refused to sign the part of suspended of the budget legislation that pays the legislature. So they're not getting paid right now. He cut them off. One of the things that you said, it was interesting. You were talking about Trump being more active with his blog. One of the things he did with his blog was endorse Abbott's reelection in Texas. And there was some pushback on there from conservatives saying, this guy wasn't, he wasn't the purest conservative during this term. And it's like, let's put in Alan West or something. With all due respect to Alan West, he's not going to win the governor's race in Texas, right? And if you put somebody up like that, you have a chance of a Democrat winning. So I think I think Trump is right there. He backed the right pony.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I did have a younger committee. She actually posted that endorsement, from Trump. She put it up on Facebook, and with a comment about, this isn't going to go well or whatever. This was kind of if he wants to win the race, this was kind of a stupid thing to do, And so, I went and I looked at this and I'm like, I don't understand what the problem here is. Is like, this is an incumbent governor who's still pretty popular and he should win re-election. And I don't think having Trump's endorsement is probably a plus for him down there. It's like, I didn't understand what she was thinking in terms of the alternative of this. Like, they're not going to find another candidate that's going to win statewide at this point in time. I mean, it's so that I saw that this morning and I'm kind of like, what is she saying? I mean, she's pretty good conservative, but I didn't get it. So I'm glad you chimed in on that this was apparently something that a lot of people have been saying, but they're kind of wrong-headed.
I mean, he didn't like open up as fast as DeSantis did and so forth, but he opened up as fast as he could, right? And so I mean, you can quibble on him, but I still think he's your best choice.
Right, and then I think with DeSantis, with Abbott, and things like this, these two governors in particular showed what you can do when you reopen, and they haven't had these humongous spikes in cases and all these types of things. All the fear mongering didn't come to pass, and which was great. I mean, it was it helped embolden, I think, some other people along the line saying, like, yeah, we can do this as well. All this garbage that we're talking about isn't going to come to pass.
Yeah, actually, the best one of those is North Dakota, South Dakota, right? So right. North Dakota, I mean, their demographics are about the same. Yeah. Situation in terms of exposure to the disease is about the same, about as similar as any two states in the union. North Dakota, mask mandates, closed schools, closed businesses. South Dakota never even went through the exercise of identifying essential businesses. Her thing was that they're all essential, right? And no mask mandates, kept the schools open and everything. Their COVID rates are about the same. So all the things North Dakota did resulted in nothing. You also notice, I guess we'll talk about this later, there's big cache of Fauci emails have been released through a FOIA request someone made, right? And one of them says, it's him writing a letter to Sylvia Burwell, who was head of OMB, and then later Health and Human Services under President Obama, is now president of American University. And he told her that, the droplets are too small. The mask we're all wearing don't do any good and doesn't make any sense for you to wear a mask, right? It's written by him right there in public, right? Which is true, which is what I've always said. And to this day, and I challenge anybody out here watching this, if you have scientific evidence, not the recommendation of the pediatricians, but actual studies showing the efficacy of masks versus COVID, please send them, because as far as I know, they do not exist. So the mask thing was totally about control and didn't prevent anyone from getting COVID.
Yeah. All right. And Bob has chimed in here. I thought your take on the Trump election matter is spot on, Brian. Best to set aside unrealistic, far-fetched discussions of presidential reinstatement and dig into election battles in 2022 and 2024. Yeah, and just for everybody, we did pay Bob to say that.
Although we would.
Spencer has just chimed in saying Powerline blog calls Fauci Fraudchi.
Yeah.
I mean that's part of the problem here. I mean, I guess we can, since you mentioned, we can segue into, we'll just kind of bump around here a little bit. But I mean, there were thousands of emails, FOIA requests. I think BuzzFeed published a bunch, and Washington Post has a bunch, and there's some. Bob asked how much. Whatever Brian's
journalism, I love it.
Whatever Brian's willing to pay you, I don't know.
What's this worth?
But so we have these emails, and you mentioned this one with Burwell and Fauci, and this was like, what was it, February or something like that of last year? Yeah, it's like the store-bought masks, really don't provide any protection, at all. And so, I mean, he's gonna pay a price for this, in a sense of being people are going to focus on it. It's like, but you said, we got to do this. You got to do this stuff,
right? And you created a lot of like mask police types and mask Karens and mask this and that. You created a lot of division in the country with that. A big fight, and you set people against each other. You also have said, hey, they were right about all this, and you were wrong, right? And the mask police were wrong, right? All the people like us who were skeptical of all this and questioned all this and said, is this really, show us the proof that this is helping, and little things like that, bothersome things like that, were right. The conspiracy theorists on this were right. So he knew about the gain of function research. He took conversations offline. He knew we were paying for things that he had been told, and this is one of the interesting things. Obama had told him to stop funding any gain of function research in China, and he backdoored it. He kept doing it through backdoors. Now, you can have a discussion over whether we should be there watching this happen. We certainly don't, certainly not safer letting the Chinese do all this themselves, right? Their lab, standards don't seem to be all that high. And in fact, it's a pretty poor record of labs anywhere in the world of containing these kinds of diseases. So, it's a dangerous thing they're doing. Other emails, it's like, who he trusted. And you can tell that this was a guy who, believed in this research, believed the United States should be funding it, was willing to crush the story of, or, what would be the discredit, I guess would be the best word, stories that this came from the lab, when he appears to have known full well that it came from the lab, that this is exact side, and another thing about this that came out of these things is someone raising concerns with him, an email to him from a researcher who said, we have found markers on here of AIDS, like of things associated with the AIDS virus, the HIV virus. And we are, that don't appear to be natural, right? And they appear to be put there to make it more contagious and more virulent, more, damaging to people. And we're trying to understand why they would do that and how it could be a animal caused, pure virus if it has these things that appear to have been, sort of like you say, aftermarket added on, right? So, there's a lot of questions now to be answered. The other question is, why are we hearing about all this now, right? It appears that the usefulness of Dr. Fauci to the Biden administration has run out, right? And so you're going to see so much damaging information about Dr. Fauci in coming days / weeks that I don't think you will see him in his present position for much longer. I think they've decided to get rid of him, and this is how they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, plus there was that email, I can't remember from who was from, but they said, right, that it looked like this thing might be man-made or something like this, and Fauci's response, he kind of poo-pooed it, he kind of pushed that off.
That's a ridiculous paper. Let's talk on the phone about it. Okay, well, it's so ridiculous. Just explain what's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, kind of maybe this thing might turn to be true, but he really wanted to dismiss this as much as possible. Plus, and then there was another inquiry he had from someone in China, I think, as well. And so, yeah, you put a few of these together, and you're like, oh, what the heck is going on here? I mean, there are thousands of emails overall. A lot of them don't really matter, but you start when you start mining through this stuff, and you start thinking like, we put how much faith in this guy? They put him up on this pedestal, right? The media made this big deal about this guy, but he's not who they said he was by any stretch of the imagination. Right. And we were in this mass situation. And I don't know about I don't know what you're seeing in your neck of the woods yet, because we talk about this. And I think try to talk about this every time we do the show in terms of where we are with mask and no mask as the mandates are being lifted in our various jurisdictions. But it just seems that there's a long tail on this before people are going to feel comfortable about taking them off in certain situations. I've mentioned I can go to Costco and I'm like the only person without a mask, or my wife, that type of thing. We went out last night to Cafe Rio, which is our favorite little Mexican place.
Tuesday night, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, so we went over there. We decided to go over there, and there's no sign on the door about wearing a mask at all. Not even if you have been fully vaccinated or anything like this. There's no sign on the door entering. And I go in there, and everybody in front of me in line is all wearing masks. And if the employees wear a mask, I can understand if the company's saying, right now, go ahead and do that or whatever. That's not a big deal to me. There was a young lady behind us that wasn't wearing, but I was watching people kind of trying to get a gauge of this, and I saw like a younger guy, and I guess it was with his mom, and they were walking from their car. They were completely maskless, and as soon as they pulled up to the door, they pulled their mask out of their face. And I'm like, but there's no requirement, It's like if you're comfortable out walking out, if you're already comfortable without a mask, you don't have to put it on. I mean, what's the deal here?
Right, that's right. So over here, so things did get a little better. Father announced in church on Sunday, you don't have to wear a mask. We've been having to. You had to like reserve which mass you were going to make sure not too many people came to each mass. We usually go at 7:30 in the morning. There's no overcrowding at 7:30.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I get a little nap in first. But you know, I looked around the church, and more than half of the people still had masks. They kept them on. They didn't take them off. And it's like, you know, when we walked in, the guy said, "You don't have to wear a mask." Yeah, Marty, I couldn't believe how fast Marty got that mask off and in his pocket. You know, so I think it is coming to an end. There's some things like the schools have not relented on this yet. So, you know, the school kids are still wearing them. Like, I have to go into a gym tonight for 4 hours and wear one. And they haven't changed those rules and probably aren't going to change them, you know, before our gym permit runs out in a couple of weeks. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's still behind the curve on moving toward this. There is no reason to wear a mask at this point. The presence of this disease is, you know, it's almost disappeared. You know, we talked about it being the 18th week. We're now on about the 20th, 21st week of the year. And like all viruses, it's virtually died, right? I think there was 7 new cases in Virginia yesterday. So, you know, it's not happening anymore. And there's no reason for us to sit around and act as if it is. And we're, you know, we know how to treat it. Just go live your life. It's over.
Yeah, we had a maintenance guy come by yesterday, and you know, my first thing my wife says to him says, "We're vaccinated. You don't have to wear a mask." And he goes, "Cool," you know. He took and he lowered it right away. Yep. You know, I mean, and that's, you know, just we're seeing that. I noticed, like today in the gym, I was looking around because I've just been trying to mentally kind of see how things are going, and it's been kind of a mixed bag, you know, since the mandate was, you know, restrictions were lifted in Montgomery County, but today it seemed to be both more crowded than normal on any given day, and more maskless people exercising today than had been in the past. So I'm beginning to wonder if we've kind of started to turn the corner in some places, that people are now hitting their comfort level, you know, with all of this, that I'm going to see fewer and fewer people coming to various places, stores or whatnot, you know, without a mask. I have a feeling the Asians are used to wearing masks because if they've been in, you know, Hong Kong, you know, in China, Hong Kong, Japan, you know, Korea, whatever, they may not lower their mask for a long time, you know, but I think you know, we're maybe every time I see people, the more people I see that aren't masked, the closer I feel that we are back to where we were. You know, we're getting to that stage of doing that. Even the restaurant last night, all the tables were open. Right. Yeah,
and you're also seeing, like, you know, these ball games on TV. The crowds are starting to look like crowds again. The idea of, like, all these people requiring you to prove that you were vaccinated in order to access their services. I guess the airlines are still trying to do that to some extent.
Yeah, public transportation, airlines. Yep, you still.
But I think that's going to die. I don't think they can survive that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the TSA rule stands until like mid-September, but, you know, they may look at this and they may lift it sooner. I mean, you know, if they're seeing people going around there, it's like, and I do think that the mask rule, particularly with the airlines, only contributes to more of the rage. I mean, people are crazy. Yeah. We have people doing crazy things anyway, but I think, you know, there's a lot of resentment on having to wear a mask for hours on a plane, and so it's just, I think, you know, things are showing that it's pretty safe. Let people, you know, take their masks off. You'll get better behavior, I think, in the long run too.
Man, there's been a lot of fights over it. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
You know, I see these things on the internet, people just going nuts, and, you know, going after babies and stuff. You know, putting a mask on a 15-month-old baby. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, no, that's just
you're not going to make that baby sick, and that baby is not going to make you sick.
Right. All right, I want to move on here with Kamala Harris. So, you know, here's Kamala Harris, who we've been talking about for weeks, months. You know, how long has it been since Biden tasked her with fixing that border crisis, for which the media is not talking about at all, because she hasn't done anything, and so they don't want to talk about it. They're not going to highlight that failure. But now he gives her another role of this, you know, pushing for this voting bill, this voting rights, this, you know, this HR1 type of a thing. And I was going to look it up, and I forgot. Didn't he give her something else in between too? I mean, it's like it seems like he's been giving her these duties, but she's not doing anything, you know, with any of this. She's going to fail on this as well, I figure.
Well, I mean, you know, I am not sure at this point if that's not by design. if they're not giving her things that are impossible, so that they can highlight that she wasn't very good at them. It appears there's been a few stories here in the last few days that they don't get along. The Biden people and the Kamala people are not on good terms. That they don't have a lot of respect for each other, and that she doesn't have a lot of respect for the president. That's fine. You know, that's certainly not the first time in the history of politics. Doesn't seem that Obama took Biden all that seriously when he was vice president. But she, you know, the voting rights bills, you know, are not going to make it. They are that you can't do that through reconciliation. Doesn't have anything to do with money. So you have to get 60 votes to get it off the floor. They don't have the votes to change the rules to end the filibuster for that. And I don't think they're going to end the filibuster. I think that's blocked, and I think it's a bad idea. And I think they're, you know, going to have to go away and come back again on what they're trying to do on voting. I think, you know, so, and I don't even think our regular traders, you know, Collins, Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, increasingly are on this one. I think even they can see the problems with this. I also think it's wildly, and you know, I wish some lawyer would let, you know, come on and talk about this, is wildly unconstitutional, right? Because it seems to be federal government rewriting state election law. To me, just broadly, you know, most of the bill would do that. So, you know, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's given her an impossible task, and you have to start asking yourself why. You know, he's given her, you know, maybe the first one was a legitimate effort to see if she could do something, and now she's going to be given stuff that can't be accomplished, basically, because you can't count on her to accomplish it anyway.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? It's like he just, you know, he's like, okay, well, she failed, good, check. But this other thing is not going to go anywhere. Let's give that to her, you know, and that'll be another check. And as they come on, it'll be, you know, let's see what happens as this presidency continues to roll along, to see if he just keeps giving her these impossible tasks and frames her as just, you know, and people can frame her as a failure so they can find something else. But you're right. I mean, you know, in terms of politics, you know, vice president, president, a lot of times they can be kind of strange bedfellows. They are there for convenience, to try to bring in someone else. You don't, if you bring someone who's exactly like you, you're not really, you know, if you're trying to do the electoral calculus, that doesn't really help you. If you're trying to bridge, I mean, you know, Trump bringing Pence in is a very good move, in my opinion, because Pence appealed to a lot of people that Trump did not appeal to. So that makes sense. Harris is a black, you know, first female black vice president type of thing. That's a good, you know, maneuver in that sense. Whether or not get along, yeah, we're seeing maybe potential problems along that line. But, you know, talk about, to me, this whole thing about voting, you know, trying to basically usurp state election laws. It's like, you know, the Democrats are talking about, you know, our democracy in peril. This is one way.
This is your democracy in peril right here.
You're undermining our democracy right then and there. Come on, give me a break. Plus, and you just mentioned the filibuster. You know, Biden gives a speech about the Tulsa, you know, massacre thing, and he takes a shot really at Manchin and Sinema, right? Because, you know, they're not in favor of just being, you know, getting rid of the filibuster, and he's thinking like, you know, I've got two Republicans, two Democrats, I won't name them, but they're voting a lot with Republicans, it seems.
Right, which I thought that was kind of an odd way to sort of get them back in the.
Yeah, I don't think that's a winning strategy for him by doing that at all.
Yeah. I thought that was really sort of odd to criticize them in that way.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to win Manchin and Sinema over and say, oh yeah, we'll next time we'll make sure we vote your way, right? I don't think that's going to happen. I think,
you know, I mean, there's a big effort in the Democrat Party to try to pressure them into these votes that they don't want to take. But I mean, Manchin, you know, he doesn't have any choice. Trump won every county in West Virginia. He won. That was the highest margin of victory he had in any state. So, you know, Manchin's on thin ice every day of his political life. He cannot vote for this crazy stuff they want. And that SR1, HR1, whatever it is not, you know, that's nuts. That is nut bag legislation that can't ever pass.
Right. So Bob has come back here,
given the thing into pressure for that, and I don't think that may make sense to some people, but I don't think it's going to carry the day.
Right. No, that's right. I mean, that's the thing, is that, you know, the Texas thing tried to, you know, fan the flames again to try to bring this up again, but it's not enough. It's not going to work. It's not a good argument for them at all. Bob's latest comment here: given the evidence thus far, assigning Giggles tasks she cannot accomplish appears to be a fairly easy exercise for Mumbles.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Bob and all his renaming schemes.
And he can say, I tried to help her. I tried to give her stuff to do to burnish her credentials and so forth, and she didn't make it happen. Look at all the chances I gave her. And he'll be right.
Right, and this is also the way for Biden and for the administration to push off some of the trickier tasks in essence to her, right. So they can kind of give themselves some distance and separation. It's like, well, we tried. I mean, we gave it to the vice president to kind of handle. We gave her that responsibility, and whatever happened. Don't blame me. It's her fault.
Yeah,
so
right.
And I think they, especially with the border issue, that was not going well for them at all. So how do you do things? You shift the blame to your VP, and right. let her kind of just wallow in that.
Right, because the problem with the border is the policies, right? So I mean, I think one of the things we're talking about was the amnesty. They changed so people need to understand what's going on here. People come from Central America or wherever, and they come here to our border. And when they see Border Patrol people, they run to them and give themselves up and ask for amnesty. So if you ask for amnesty, then you file an asylum claim, and they evaluate your claim. Now, what most of the people who are coming from Central America are economic migrants. They're coming because where they were is poor and they don't have good economic opportunities. It's a good reason to leave and, to come here and everything. But our asylum law does not address that. Our asylum law is for people who will be directly prosecuted by their own government, persecuted by their own government if they don't leave, right? So almost all the asylum cases that are heard on the border fail. Almost everyone loses, like way past 90% of them lose. So, the question is, what do they do while they're waiting on their case to come up? And Trump's solution was wait in Mexico, because for one thing, don't incentivize. You're not going to get into the country by coming here and claiming asylum, right? But by making an asylum claim that's, almost certainly a loser. And what happens is people sign up for these asylum hearings, right? And they don't show up because they know they will lose, and they know that it's all stacked against them, and they're not they don't all stay 5 miles from the border, right? They go all over the country. They say, okay, my aunt is in St. Louis. I'm going to go be in St. Louis. So to track that person down, we have to send people to St. Louis to go find her wherever she is and bring her back and do her thing. And that's expensive, and we don't end up doing it much, right? We end up saying, okay, you beat the system. Okay. So what Trump said is, we're going to take out the incentive of beating that system. You wait in Mexico, and if you win, you're in, right? But since most of them know they won't win, they don't come. Okay. So that was when Biden changed this, and Biden changed this, the next day, right? After he became president, right? We're only now seeing the effects of it, right? But he changed this the day after he became president. That set up all this, the new caravans that came, the quintupling of border illegal crossings, of contacts with border officers, highest totals in 60 years and so forth, people trying to sneak in the country, because the Biden administration told them there was something in it for you. If you can just get here and give yourself up, you can wait inside the country to get for your asylum hearing. And we all know that probably means you'll never show up and you'll be in the country. So, I mean, this is a gigantic thing here, and it was the linchpin of Donald Trump's efforts to get control of the border, and it was working.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, just as you mentioned, I mean, these people, I mean, they come in, they ask for asylum, and yeah, they can get released. They can say, well, yeah, we'll be wherever, St. Louis, whatever, to our nearest relative, et cetera. But yeah. The Border Patrol, I mean, immigration, they're not going to go track most of these people down, and these people know it. So therefore, they got the free pass. It's like they don't have official asylum by sanctioned by the government, but they're running around. Who knows where the heck they are? We can't and won't track them. But Mexico, if you know fully well that you're going to have to stay in Mexico until this asylum hearing comes up, it's like, what the heck is the incentive?
Right, exactly. And Biden said, well, it was dangerous for them to wait in Mexico. Their response to that was to stop coming, to stop making asylum claims that had no basis in fact, right? To stop trying to do something you knew you were going to fail at. So now you've said, well, you might as well try because you might succeed, and even if you don't succeed, you're going to end up in the U.S.
Right. Yeah. So that policy is, I guess, it's now officially ended in terms of remaining in Mexico. Right. That's the big thing.
Right.
And then he's also now canceled, these leases in Alaska that came up under Trump as well. So once again, the left didn't like those things. They didn't, trying to get to getting us away from fossil fuels as much as possible. And I didn't realize until the other day, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal, which I didn't fully read yet, that there was this huge movement. I guess Berkeley, they ban like new developments and stuff like that from using natural gas in development. It's just all this kind of a thing. It's like, this is just nuts. So the red states, I guess, a lot of places said, they've passed laws to say you can't ban, we're not going to ban this, or we can't do this and stuff like that.
They don't have an alternative. And the thing about you talked about the Alaska, okay? Trump is part of the tax legislation. He got this put into the tax bill, the American Jobs Tax Cuts Act, back in 2017. That they would be oil leasing in the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve. That is a 1.9 million acre park. Okay, they need to drill to get all the oil that there is believed to be there, which is a ton. It's enough to supply the country for 3 or 4 years just by itself. Okay, to get all that oil out, okay, they need a footprint the size of Dulles Airport. The park is the size of South Carolina. So you're talking about, could you plunk down an airport size lot in South Carolina, and could we possibly exist with it? Okay. And you go and read about their stuff. Okay. There are fewer than 1,500 people who live in this South Carolina sized park year round. Most of the people are basically nomadic Eskimo tribes. Right. They have concocted this political something called the Gwich'in, right? And there's like, oh, the Gwich'in tribe is against it. The Gwich'in tribe has no interest in it. Right. They've come up with some activists and given them a name and trotted them out in front of the cameras. But there's no tribe back there saying, please don't do this. The tribe, to the extent the tribes have anything to say at all, they get money out of this. There's the Alaska payment, right? They pay everybody so much a year out of the oil revenues. Every man, woman, and child in Alaska gets a check. So, this increases the payment. So the tribes are not against this. That's just, totally made up nonsense that we hear south of the border, right? And so when you look at it, who's really against it? People from Oregon and California, Washington, Cantwell's big against it, So, it is a complete much ado about nothing issue that doesn't affect anyone. There's no one. Half this park is above the Arctic Circle. There's nobody up there messing around. Just do what you got to do. But they won't. It's a symbolic fight that with no real meaning. It could really start to hurt us strategically as they compromise other energy sources with their other, misguided regulations.
You brought up something I hadn't thought about really, kind of with all this, what I guess I'll call defossilization or whatever, that, that Alaskans they get a decent sized check every year as a result of the pipeline and all this kinds of things that go on there. I mean, the environmentalists, they get their way and they start really choking off and saying, we're going to move away from oil and things like this. I mean, Alaskans there'll be nothing on that basis at all. I mean, those royalty checks will basically completely disappear. And for a lot of those families, I mean, that's a decent slug of money for them.
Yeah, $2,000-3,000 usually.
Yeah, it can make a difference in some people's lives, you know, even small to other people. But, you know, we're talking about Alaska, which has got a wide range of people at all kinds of income levels. That's not chump change for a lot of people out there at all.
That's right.
But
it's hard to do it with, you know, it's hard to make a living up there outside of fossil fuels, right? You can't really farm,
right?
You know, so I mean, that it's most of the jobs, and if you're not in that business, you know, it's hard to do it. It's hard to make it work.
Right, and the green energy is not going to replace, you know, oil and gas industry jobs on one-to-one basis by any stretch of imagination, nor pay anywhere near as well, I think, in the long run as well. I did, you know, kind of, well, I'll throw these two together. I mean, kind of, you know, the infrastructure bill still they're still struggling with that. You know, wide difference between the Republicans and the Democrats as to where that goes, and then tie that also.
I don't know how wide it is. I think it's just a matter of money. You know, Grassley says, and what they're doing, what the Republicans are doing, is they're squeezing all the things out of this bill that aren't infrastructure, right? Like child care is not infrastructure. It's not. You want to fund child care? That's a different debate, right? We can have that debate, but it's not part of infrastructure. So, you know, I think that, you know, they're sort of, you know, leading people astray on that stuff. But you know, others have said they're not that close. You know, conceptually, if you get all that stuff out of the bill, or at least most of it, you know, it's just a matter of bringing those numbers together. And those numbers are not all that far apart, given what's at stake.
Yeah, and then the administration released on Friday, kind of almost like a data dump, just like the Friday data dump, their budget projections, and they were not good. Like, so I understand why you would do kind of this Friday afternoon dump, because it's about a 2% prediction after a couple of years. You know, they're spending all this money, and, you know, we're in this Keynesian economic situation. And we're really not. We're going to get this terrible economy going forward. And no one's talking about it, in essence.
So yeah, basically they admit the failure of Keynesianism, right? The projections are 4.7% growth this year. That was really good. Which is really good. 6.2 or something next year, right? This is all that government cash washing through the economy, right? If they pass the, you know, American Family Plan and this plan and that plan and all these, you know, trillion or more dollar piece of legislation. But then after that, it comes down to about 1.6 to 1.9% growth for, you know, the next 10 or 20 years. Okay. So in other words, once we get all this stimulus spending through the economy, you will not have any lasting benefit from that spending. Right. So if you don't get real infrastructure, if you spend it on things like childcare, right, you have no dividend down the line. You don't even have a road to drive on, right? So, you know, it's what they're asking is nonsense, and their own budget says so. I mean, it spells out why Keynes was an idiot. But, you know, let's vote it in, man. Let's go.
That's right. It's 2 minutes, Brian.
Oh, 2 minutes. So I wanted to say something about poor Naomi Osaka pulled out of the French Open after she did not want to do an interview session. She had some anxiety appearing before the press, and she's had problems with this before. And a lot of people beat on her, you know, you owe us this and that and the other. They don't really owe us a whole lot. And this kind of goes to, you know, the NBA playoffs this year. We've had a raft of instances. They threw a bottle of water, full bottle of water at Kyrie Irving. They threw popcorn or something on Russell Westbrook. There's been a couple of more. There was a guy who ran on the court here in D.C. last night, or not last night, night before last.
Spitting on Trae Young, I think.
Yeah, spitting on Trae Young, who plays for Atlanta. That's a lot of, you know, that's a lot of fans making the news, doing stupid stuff in a short period of time. And so what's going on? I mean, some of it is we've been cooped up for a long time, and, you know, we've sort of forgotten how to behave, you know, some of us. And you know, one hopes that when we get back used to being in public and going to games and cheering and, you know, all the things that go with that, that, you know, you'll see some of that die down. But, you know, I think that the answer to that one is, and some of the teams have done it, taken real good action for, you know, you're banned for life. You're never coming in here again. We know who you are, and you're not coming in. and you can't come to any NBA games. You're done being an NBA fan, right? And I mean, throw the book out. If you find out who these people are, you know, punish them to the fullest extent of the law and don't let them back in. So, you know, other fans who start thinking of doing it, it's like, well, you know, I would like to come to a game again, so I will not do this. And you're going to have to take somebody that all they do is run across the court and, you know, hold a sign or something stupid like that and throw the book at them so that everybody says, oh, they're not messing around. They punished a relatively minor offender like this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I have some empathy for Osaka. I mean, anytime you bring up, you know, things that kind of resulting in mental health. I mean, this is definitely, especially with with COVID and everything that we've gone through. There's been a lot of things happening with people, you know, and so I don't want to question her sincerity on that at all. It gets to be kind of tricky because sports expects that everybody has kind of a mandatory media appearance. And then I think they're going to have to.
I think in tennis, you're required to, like, it's part of being part of the tour.
Right. So they'll have to kind of address that and figure out where's a good medium halfway point for them to figure all that out. But you're right. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Wear a mask if you want. Don't wear a mask if you don't want. I mean, we have those freedoms of being restored finally. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see you again next week.